I don't work some forward folds. So if you ever, there's lots of ways to help yourself if you're feeling unwell in lots of different ways, whether it's, you're kind of feeling like you're coming down with something where you can do a practice that really stimulates your lymph, or perhaps you're a little run down and you need a practice to just kind of restore your energy, or whatever it is that you kind of feel a little imbalanced with. That yoga always has something to offer for supporting us physically and emotionally. Forward folds are this beautiful gift that I tend to, I think I avoid them just a teeny bit because sometimes they bother my back. And I think I'm not alone in that. So I think it's really important to kind of focus on them sometimes so that you can tell what it is that you're doing well to make forward bends a healthy part of your practice. So on the emotional side, when you rest your forehead on something, when there's a hand or a block or a piece of furniture or a prop of some kind, there's this deep soothing nature to the nervous system that happens. Especially when someone else puts their hand on your head, there's this gift of ease that can happen from our own hand or someone else's. So if you have a headache, or if you have a sense of overwhelm where the mind needs to rest, there's a lot of gifts that can be had through forward folds with your head supported. So we're going to do a little bit of that toward the end of our practice today. So in regard to the way to healthfully move in a forward fold, a lot of times the problem ends up being where we round our back to come forward, and we have this like hunch right here on our back, and our low back has this sense of compression on the front and over opening in the back, and there's not a lot of stability in the vertebrae. So if we instead think about our pelvis being what is really moving in forward folds instead of our spine rounding, it can be very nourishing for the low back. So if you tend to spend a lot of time hunched over, either hunched over a computer or whatever kind of work you're doing, if you tend to lean over or lean forward, there can be a lot of strain on the low back. So part of learning to stabilize in a forward fold is learning to use your core well and learning to move your pelvis well. So we're going to focus a little bit on that. Remember that anterior tilting, so forward tilting your pelvis over your femur bones, will free up the movement of your spine. So we're going to work with some active forward folds and some passive forward folds today in our practice. So less is more. Think always that your goal is not to touch your toes. Let go of the expectation that a good yogi is someone who can fold their body in half. Really, that for many, many people, that's an extreme movement that is unattainable. So think more about, how do I get the range of motion in my pelvis to move? How do I get my spine to be free so that when I'm folding forward, there's ease involved instead of tension and strain involved? And then they become gifts for our practice. So let's go ahead and start practicing. So close your eyes for a moment and notice where you are in space. Are you up on good support? Do you have one or two blankets or a couple of blocks or a chair or anything that feels supportive to you? Usually, most of us need support under our pelvis when we're sitting. And a lot of times we think, oh, I'm just sitting here for a minute, it doesn't matter. But just a little bit of support can make all the difference. So notice where your pelvis is in space. Do you tend to fall forward? Do you tend to roll backward? Do you tend to slump the spine? Do you lean into one side or the other? Is a hip or a knee or an ankle an issue where you tend to kind of lift one more than the other? So just pay attention. Notice your topography here, where you're landing. See if you can visualize your sit bones as being tethers to the earth right now, where we're not tucking our tailbone under and we're also not pushing our tailbone up or out. We're just in a very neutral place. Think of the whole pelvis, including the roots of your sit bones, as this supportive bowl that our spine nestles within and can grow out of, like the roots of a flowering plant. So as you feel that basin of support, breathe into it. Breathe into the pelvic floor. Start to feel there's a lot of stuff going on in your pelvis. There's a lot of bones, there's a lot of muscles, there's a lot of organs. So let's just feel into your body. See if you can let the breath travel. And as we start to invite some integrity in the spine, notice when you try to lift your spine, where are you strengthening from? What tenses or tightens when you try to lift your spine? Is it your diaphragm? Is it your chest? Is it your shoulders? Or can you access some support lower down? Can you sense just a little bit of support in the pelvic floor without pulling your sit bones together or squeezing your butt? Can you feel a little support in the transverse abdominis, that deep core muscle, without making the breath inaccessible? So this is subtle. We're not putting a straitjacket on ourselves. See if you can feel that supportive nature of your pelvic bowl and your core without it binding you so much where you can't move or breathe. See if you can come into the dance of core strength, where when you inhale, things release a bit. And when you exhale, things re-engage a little bit. So it's just a fluid dance, like seaweed moving with a tidal movement, tidal current. And as you feel the stability in the lower body, start to free up the upper body. Relax the skull, the eyes, the jaw, the chest, the shoulders, even the hands. Did your breath get quiet when you went somewhere else in your body? Okay, now just to feel the support of our transverse abdominis, put your two fingers, thumb on right and ring finger on left, top nostrils. Draw in just about 20, 30, 40% or so of compression on your nostrils, and breathe in through both sides of your nose at the same time. You can bow just slightly with your head, both in and out through this slightly closed off passageway. This will invite the pressure, will invite a little waking of the diaphragm. A little waking of the core. See if you can imagine that the impetus for bringing the breath in you is not from your nostrils, but from your pelvic floor. Can you draw the breath in from the movement of the pelvis? Can you move the breath out from the pelvis and diaphragm? Don't try to overdo. I know that's a hard thing to kind of grasp in your body. After your next exhale, release the hand. Feel your posture for a moment. Let's put our hands over our eyes, over our forehead. Keep your chest lifted. Try not to fall into your hands and round and slump, but lift your hands to support. Feel the warmth over your eyes, over your skull. Begin to move a little bit here. Arms up. Open the chest. Cactus, open the arms. And then place the hands on the knees. Now we're going to seated cacao, round the spine a little bit, chin tucks, arch the back a little bit, chin lifts, touch the teeth gently so that you get the fullness in the front of your neck. All right, on the next in-breath, arms up one more time. Invite open the day. And place the hands together at the heart. Bow in, create an intention. Feel the bow, feel how your brain rests against your skull. The third eye resting, that sense of concentration, intention. And release the hands, and let's come onto our back. All right, so as you lie down, just feel into the beauty of your body, this beautiful body that you have that is carts you around, carts your soul, your brain around all day. So let's enjoy and care for and love up ourselves. All right, so stretch and lengthen. Reach left side, reach right side. Just enjoy the opening and awakening of the ribs and the hips. See if you can get the feeling that your pelvis is actually moving. So hike one hip up as you stretch the other heel down, and then do the opposite and notice the feeling in your back and in your side and in the front of your pelvis when you do this. Okay. All right, and then relax your arms. Bend your knees, put your feet flat on the ground. We're just going to do a little tailbone scrubbing so that we invite some energy into our multifidus muscles, which are the muscles that connect one vertebrae to the next. All right, so a little bit of pelvic tilting, tailbone up, round the pelvis into a posterior tilt, and then tailbone down, top of sacrum, lifting up. So just get into a little bit of pelvic movement here, of the sit bones widening, the top, bottom of the tailbone dropping, the top of the sacrum lifting, and then switch like a little seesaw, top of sacrum into the ground, tailbone up, sit bones toward each other. Bring the breath into this movement. Inhale as you anterior tilt the pelvis. Exhale as you posterior tilt the pelvis. Just get used to knowing what it feels like to move the pelvis instead of the spine so much. A lot of times we can get really locked up in our hip joints and not really have that subtlety of being able to keep the pelvis rolling over the femur bones instead of using our back to bend forward. Okay, now find a neutral place for a moment. Okay, rest down, and we're going to try to scrub our tailbone up toward our shoulders. So it's a little bit of an isometric where we're pulling our tailbone as if we had a big dinosaur tail and we were trying to lift the big heavy dinosaur tail up toward our shoulders. And just feel the ripple of engagement in the little muscles along your spine. Rest in between with a neutral or a pelvic tilt. And just go back and forth. So it's similar in the action of the pelvis, but we're really trying to highlight the strength of the small muscles along our back. A couple more times, scrubbing this tailbone up toward the shoulders and then releasing. One last time, scrubbing up toward our shoulders and releasing. All right, let's windshield wiper our knees left and right and just feel some ease in the low back. You know, it's not just the multifidus that get engaged when you do that. It's also your quadratus lumborum, the deep low back muscles, as well as all the other muscles that kind of line up your spine, your erector spinae. So, you can just ignore me if I throw out muscle names that you've not heard of. It's all good. As long as you feel them in your body, you don't need to know names. Limbs out wide, stretch and lengthen, wiggle your fingers and toes, know yourself in space. Exhale, knees into the chest and round the spine, pick up your head and enjoy a compression. A couple more times, expand your body outward, invite the breath in, exhale, invite the breath out. One more time, open things up, exhale. Close things up. Relax your head, rest on the floor, keep your knees kind of tucked toward your chest and just rock a little bit from side to side. And then you can pull your knees a little further away and start rolling through some motions, circling knees a little bit, just feeling your sacrum on the floor. All right, and then let's open the knees away from each other and bring them back in. And start to feel into the hip joints themselves. What does it feel like when you move the femur bones in the hip joints. So now our pelvis is fixed and stable, and the mobility happens in our femur bones. And at some points in our practice today, we're going to stabilize the femur bones and let the pelvis do the moving. So just feel those joints. Do you have one hip that's a little different than the other? You know, do you have some changes in your, your anatomy? Do you have some pinching or compression anywhere? And now let's grab the feet and come into happy baby pose. And you can rock or be still. You can hold behind the knees or feet and enjoy a little bit of stretching through those muscles. So it's safe to do this in this position because we're not weight bearing on the pelvis. So rounding the back a little bit can feel very freeing and open in this position. All right, last time, spread the limbs. Deep breath in, exhale, knees into the chest and roll over onto your side. Come up onto all fours. Okay, and let's start moving through some cat-cows. Take a moment to yield to ground, and then start moving your vertebrae. Notice how mobile you are, where you move well, maybe where you don't move as well. Feel that same action we were doing on the floor of the pelvis, anterior and posterior tilting. And then move around. Maybe you want to swish your tail from side to side. Maybe you want to roll your rib cage around. Maybe you want to roll your pelvis around or your head around. Notice how much mobility your spine has. All right, and when you're ready, stretch back to child's pose. Grab a block if you have it and stick it underneath your forehead. So even if you're comfortable with your head on the ground, just try this variation for a moment. Have the hands walking to wherever forward they're comfortable. Drop weight into the hips. And notice the weight of your head dropping into the block. As you feel the cue of the head can relax, let that tell your jaw to relax, your tongue to relax, the base of your skull to relax, and find the breath. Some forward folds are different than other forward folds. So it's just a classic way of resting. Now, if you want to slide the block out and put your head on the floor, that's great too. Just notice the difference. Let the breath travel in your ribs. Let the breath travel to your pelvis. And let's walk the hands over to one side and feel the opening through the side of your body. Stretch and breathe. It's okay if your hips come off your heels and come higher. Whatever feels good, walk over to the other side. Open up the rib cage. And then come back to center. Swish around the spine again, just get some movement going. And then stretch your right foot back behind you, curl your toe under and let the calf open a bit. Breathe here. And then when you're ready, cross that right foot over the left foot. So it's crossed over to the other side, and we're going to turn and look out over that right foot on the left side of your mat. Open up the side of your back. Breathe there. And then when we come back center, lift that leg in the air, find some pulses, engage your glutes a bit, extend the spine, take a deep breath in, exhale, knee right to your nose, let your back round just a little bit. Inhale, lift it back straight. Exhale, bring your knee to the outer elbow. Inhale, bring it back. Exhale, knee on the floor, second side. Left foot, curl your toes under, stretch your calf, enjoy the awakening. Yield through your hands well, keep breathing well. Cross your foot over to all the way to the right and look out over the right, look at your left foot. Square the hips and shoulders to the floor, open up the ribs, open up the side waist. And then come back to center, lift that leg in the air. You can pulse it a couple times so you know where you are in space. Feel your core. Deep breath in, exhale, knee to nose. Inhale, bring it out. Exhale, knee to outer elbow. Bring it back. Place a foot on the ground and come up to dog pose. Now let's enjoy a forward fold here. So feel free to get yourself situated. You can bend one knee and then the other, kind of awakening the bottom of the feet, the Achilles, the back of the calves, the backs of the hamstrings. Just feel into what's opening here. You can move your hips around. All right, and then bend your knees a fair amount. Push off your hands. Lengthen the heart toward the pelvis. And then imagine you have a strap. Some of you have done this with me. Imagine a strap across the top of your thighs, reaching your femur bones back. Find some gaps, some space in the heads of your femur bones in the hip joints. Can you move the femur bones to nestle in the back of the joint? Spread the bones of the feet, soft knees. And then walk your feet forward and come into Uttanasana. Bend your knees a lot. Knees bending is a key to being able to move your pelvis properly in a forward fold. Inhale for a halfway lift. The spine is growing longer. Exhale and relax back down. Push off your feet, drop your hips, reach the arms, open yourself up, lean back, and then relax the arms. Shake them out a little bit. Okay. So one thing to remember always when you are bending forward, if we're trying to touch our toes and we round our back like this, this puts a lot of pressure on our back. If we bend our knees and move our pelvis, this is a lot more stable. So bend your knees as you come back down into forward fold as much as you need to, so you're not rounding the back. So let the sit bones lift. Let the tailbone lift. Let the rest of your spine kind of follow that sense of freedom that happens when we move the pelvis. Relax your neck, dangle. Feel the roots of your feet, four corners of feet, rooting down, rise up through the sit bones. Can you nestle the heads of the femur bones back in the joints a little bit more? Straighten the legs a millimeter more without changing the angles of your spine. And then a halfway lift. I'm not a huge fan of holding my legs. You can even, actually, let's all do this. Grab a piece of furniture or a wall. Everybody come into a half lift with support underneath your hands. Thigh bones moving way back in the hip joints. See if you can lift the sit bones, spread open the bones of the feet and drop them down. So root to rise. So we're reaching into the earth and then lifting the femur bones up and back, lifting the sit bones up high. So let the pubic bone kind of feel like it can pass through the inner thighs. Soft knees. Try not to collapse. I felt like I was collapsing a little bit in my shoulders. See if you can extend through the spine instead. And then take a step forward wherever you are and find Tadasana. Inhale, lifting the arms up, lean back a little bit, open the chest. Exhale, float forward. You can bend your knees as much as you want. Halfway lift. Exhale and fold. Step your left foot back, right foot comes forward. Coming into a lunge. Drop your back knee down onto the ground so you really feel the openness of the hip flexors in that back leg. All right, and then lift the knee off the floor and let's go back and forth between straightening the front leg a bit, chin toward chest, opening the front knee, heart expansive. Okay, so back and forth. See what it feels like to straighten the leg a little bit, to bend the leg. Okay, move with your breath. All right, ground your legs, rise up. Bring a heart space to your practice. Open the heart, lean back a little bit. Find your breath. All right, and then release the hands. Back foot comes forward. Bend your knees, relax your neck. Halfway lift, hands can be on blocks or on legs, straight legs here. Then exhale and bend again. Step your other foot back. Left foot is now forward, right foot back. Put your knee down on the ground. Just enjoy the opening of the hip flexors and that back leg. Ground through the four corners of your front foot. Discover your breath. And then when you're ready, pick that knee up off the ground and start to bend and straighten your front leg. Now, as you do this, notice if your hips get wonky. You know, do you pop out to the side? Do you round your back? You know, what do you do to try to escape the tightness of your hamstrings? Instead of escaping, just be where you are. Stop where you are, where you can still move the femur bone back in the hip joint. Back and forth, awakening the hamstrings. All right, ground your legs. When you're ready, rise up, open the chest. Put your arms anywhere that serves your breath best. Breathe well. Ground yourself. Okay, hands down, step back to dog pose. Spin the pelvis again, anterior tilt so the pubic bone passes through the inner thighs. Inner thighs spiraling back, sit bones high and wide. Feel the hands and the feet roots reach into the spine. Let the knees bend as much as you need to so you can nestle the heads of the femur bones back and feel the release in your spine instead of legs straight and rounding the back. All right, let's take the right foot. Actually, come into a plank. We haven't done a plank yet. Come to a plank. Stabilize through your core. Find your breath. Okay. Put your knees down on the ground and come into a forearm plank. Forearm planks are really good for kind of waking up your transverse abdominis. So let's bring our elbows down. Integrate. So maybe your hands are facing toward each other. Maybe your hands are on the floor. Integrate the center of your body. Let's turn our navel to the right. Keep your chest facing the floor. Back to center, turn your navel to the left. Back to center. Okay, put your knees down. Sphinx pose. Open your chest. Shoulders back. And then exhale and release. Take your arms out on an angle, palms down. Open up again. Extend through your body. Exhale and melt again. Come up onto all fours. Move that spine around. Swish and sway. Right leg straight back behind you. Left arm out in front of you. Feel the muscles along your spine. Balance them out with the muscles in the front of your body. Can you feel that sense that your core stabilizes you and the muscles along your back stabilize you? Deep breath in. Exhale. Try to do this without over rounding. See if you can keep your chest pointing forward. Tuck in. Inhale. Bring it out again. Let's do that twice more. Exhale. Elbow and knee. Try not to over round your back. Inhale. Reach it out. Last time. Bring the elbow and knee toward each other. Keep the chest lifting forward. Use your core and your hip flexors to lift that leg. Out you go. Hand down onto the ground. Let's change sides. Engage through your hip, through your hamstrings. Opposite arm in the air. Can you feel the integrity that you're not falling into your shoulder or collapsing through the back? We're not rounding either. We're just in that neutral plane. Having a lot of stability from the front and the back. Next exhale, let's start to move. Bring the elbow and knee underneath you. Try not to over round the back and tuck the chin. I know we do it that way sometimes. Inhale, stretch it out. Exhale, use your hip flexors to pull that knee in instead of rounding the back. One more time. And then hand down onto the ground, curl toes under and lift again. Take your legs wide to the edges of the mat, toes in just a little bit. Inner spiral of the thighs. Stretch your femur bones and the hip joints back. Widen the sit bones. Okay, walk your feet forward. Come into Uttanasana again. Inhale for a halfway lift. Exhale and melt. Let the head relax. Base of the skull is easy and soft. Push off your feet, rise up. Exhale, Tadasana. Pause here for a moment. Just notice how good it feels to be in your body, to be breathing and moving. All right, we're going to take our left foot back, our right foot forward, shorten your stance up, Uttanasana legs. Inhale, both arms up, open the chest. Bring the hands to the hips, engage your transverse abdominis. Feel that same core support we did in the planks and in the bird dog, where we were doing that spinal balancing. So use your core so you're not overusing your hamstring. Root into your both feet, all four corners of both feet. Soften your knees. Square the hips. Try not to let the attachment of your front hamstring take the entire pose within it. Can you ground your foot? Can you scrub your heel back toward your torso or toward your other leg a little bit? Lengthen through your spine so your hamstring is flexing and stretching at the same time, or contracting and extending at the same time. Bring your hands down onto the blocks. Once you do that, try not to just lose the posture where you collapse. Okay, so root your feet, pull that hip back. Now start to feel that the femur bone, your right femur bone, can move into the very back of the joint. Wide, high sit bones, inner thighs rolling back. Feel how neutral your spine can be. If it doesn't feel neutral, get higher with the blocks. Okay, walk your back foot forward, fold, rise all the way up. Big breath. Exhale, left foot forward, right foot back. Uttanasana legs. You can start with your hands up in the air and then bring them onto the hips, or just bring them onto the hips. Extend, lift the heart. So we're not collapsing downward when we do this pose. We're coming forward with a nice open heart. Round through the feet, root into the feet, pull that hip back, extend through the spine here. Breathing, try to have a sense of integrity in the glutes and the hamstring of that front foot, that they're rooting, engaging, but also they're lengthening. So have a sense of engagement and length. Feel the spine, support with your core so your legs are not hanging out there in the winds by themselves. Your core is helping. Find the four corners of your feet. Make sure you're not locking out both knees. And then eventually bring your hands to rest on blocks to whatever height you need. A lot of times we think, oh, our head has to drop really low. You can drop your head and start to feel that ease of a forward fold, but try to do it with integrity in the rest of the body. Hips are square. Root the front big toe into the ground as you lift that hip back into the joints. Wide sit bones. An anterior tilt to the pelvis. So a little bit of the pubic bone moving back, sit bones high, and then relax the spine and head. So that we're not over rounding in the forward fold. Take a moment to enjoy the head drop. And then walk your back foot forward. Touch your toes or stick a block between your thighs, whichever feels good. Chair pose. Okay, so come on up. Now your arms do not have to be up in the air. They very much can be. See if you can feel that your low back is not overarching or rounding. We want to have the neutral spine here, where your femur bones move back in the joints. So this is an active version of nestling the femur bones back. Find your breath. Try to not wrestle with your spine. So put your arms in a place where the spine is working. Those multifidus muscles are working, but they're not overworking. Relax the base of the skull. All right, stand on up. If you didn't use a block, grab one now and stick it between your thighs. We're going to do a little vinyasa with the block between our thighs to help us get the feeling that our core can help us with these postures. Take a deep breath in, rise up. Exhale, chair pose again. Find that sense of femur bones moving back. Put your arms where is most supportive for your body, for your breath. Weight is in the heels. And then up again you go. Heart open, exhale and fold. Bend your knees. Imagine the block would be spinning out backwards behind you. Can you feel your inner thighs roll on the block a little bit? So a tiny bit of an inner spiral. Sit bones get higher and wider. Relax your neck. Halfway lift. You can put your hands on legs or other block. Exhale. Now you have to kind of either jump back or little steps back to a plank pose. So as you feel the block, try not to feel as though the block is going to push toward the floor. This is an indicator that you tend to use your pelvis, you tend to push your pelvis forward. So instead, inner thigh is rolling up toward the sky. So you feel the block, release a bit, not a lot, but a bit up toward the air. And notice the difference. Push the block toward the floor and notice your back. And then lift the block toward the sky and notice your low back. So feel what happens when we push our femur bones into the front of our joints versus when we move our femur bones to the back. All right, put your knees down onto the ground. Find all fours. Get the block out between your thighs and put it between your shins. All right, so hug the block, and it can be at whatever width feels comfortable to you. And it can be high toward your knees or between your ankles or anywhere that's comfortable. And as you gently hug the block, notice your pelvic floor. Let's do some anterior and posterior tilting. So as you lift the sit bones, release the block. And as you round the spine a bit, tailbone under, hug the block. Breathing in, lift the chest, tail. Breathing out, gentle hugging of the block. The pelvic floor lifts, shines the light up to the center body. And then neutral spine. We're going to come back to a plank with the block between our shins, just where it is now. So step your feet back. You might need to do a little shimmy with the block. And notice the difference, you know, when we have the block between our calves versus our thighs. To see if you can imagine the block between your thighs. Inner spiral up, feel the ease in your back. Sit bones wide, ground through four corners of your hands. And then find your way to dog pose here with the block between your shins. Same thing, inner spiral thighs. So now we don't have the feedback of the block between our thighs, but it's still there as a placement. Okay, reach back with one hand and put the block between your thighs now. Feel the inner spiral, nestle the femur bones back, bend your knees as much as you want. Let the head begin to rest. Four corners of the hands on the ground. All right, wobble your feet forward. Halfway lift. Exhale and melt. Rise all the way up. Open the chest, lean back a little bit. Exhale and release. Bring the block out of there. Okay. Left foot back, right foot forward, still in that shorter stance that we did before. Have a block on the inside edge of your foot. Lift the arm in the air. That would be your left arm. Exhale, left hand coming down. Support your hamstrings. Try not to overdo the work in the hamstrings here. Extend the spine. Use your core. Okay, so we're grounding the feet. We're inner spiraling the thighs. Check in with your knees and make sure they're unlocked. Try not to hike the hip out to the side, but keep it hugging in. Lengthen the spine. Notice the lumbar curve. Is it neutral? Start to twist open from that neutral curve. If you round the back in this pose, it's a lot of pressure on your spine. So imagine that block between your thighs. Rolling back. Okay, exhale and release. Back foot comes forward. Front foot comes back, second side. Climb up. Now we can bring our right arm up in the air, bring your hand down. So you might have two blocks underneath your hand. Okay, so just find the height that keeps you in the neutral place in your spine. Ground four corners of your feet. Imagine the block between your thighs that you're trying to roll back. Wide sit bones, neutralize the lumbar spine. That doesn't mean arch the lumbar spine, just neutralize. Keep the hip hugged in. Allow the femur bone to nestle in the back edge of the joint. Open your chest. Find your way into revolve triangle pose. Shoulders away from the ears. Root your feet. Move with breath. Ground down. Dog pose. Hands on the ground. Sit bones high. Bend your knees as much as you want. Enjoy the head dropping. Relax. Imagine you have a block underneath your skull. Inhale, lift your right leg up in the air. Exhale, foot comes forward, plant back heel down onto the ground. Virabhadrasana 1. Feel the muscles of your back body work for this pose. Use your core to work for this pose. Extend up through your spine. You can tip your head back if it feels comfortable. Exhale, hands down, back foot comes forward. Relax. Melt your skull, the base of your neck. Halfway lift. Exhale, left foot back, or I'm sorry, right foot back, left foot forward. Ground your heel down. Virabhadrasana 1 on this side. Maybe you're leaned forward a little bit. Maybe you're leaned up a little bit. Just find where is the stability for your back. Use your core, ground through your legs. Feel your front glutes work by pressing your heel into the earth. Can you feel those multifidus muscles support you along with your core? Breathing well. Hands down onto the ground. Lift that left leg all the way up in the air. Three-legged dog. Exhale. Put your foot down onto the ground. Relax your head. Now, if you can, grab a block and find a place to put it underneath. Kind of where your hairline is, but wherever your body goes. So for some of us, this is a little more challenging to get the height just right, whether you want the block flat or second height or third height. You can try moving your arms wider apart, whatever feels good. Bend your knees, pelvic tilt, deep breaths. Ground across the balls of your feet, all 5 of them. Balls of your toes. All right, and then rest back towards child's pose. Block underneath your forehead again. You can put your arms wherever you want. Finding the breath. Come on up. And grab some support. So I'm going to use a blanket underneath my pelvis. I'm going to have a strap. I'm going to have 2 blocks, and I'm going to have a bolster too. If you don't have all that, it's not a big deal. We'll find a way, no matter what kind of props you have. But if you have lots of props, now's the time to grab them. Okay. So get your blanket underneath you to where you have height underneath your pelvis. Okay, Janu Shirshasana. So right foot leg is straight. Left foot is bent, or knee is bent. If your knee is bothering you, you can stick a block underneath your outer knee for this posture. If you have a strap, wrap it around your foot. Now in a posture like this, it's very easy to roll back onto your sacrum and feel like your back is rounded as you try to come forward. So think less about coming down toward your knee and more about coming up. Okay, so anterior tilt the pelvis, sit bones wide and high, a neutral lumbar curve. Feel into your low back. Is it neutral or is it rounded? See if you can keep the neutral and then come forward from the neutral. Heart is expansive, lifting up and forward. So think that the forward bend, it's not a downward bend, it's a forward upward bend. Okay, so stretch into the hamstrings, broaden them. Stretch into the calf, broaden them. Spread open the bones of the foot. Now and stabilize with your core. So feel into the transverse abdominis. See if you can use your exhales to stabilize the pelvis, stabilize the low back as you start to move in the pose. Now, if you have a second block, It might be, you might be able to put a block here where you rest your forehead on it. Maybe you let go of the strap and you put a block on your thigh and you rest your head. Maybe you have a bolster that you can put down and rest your head upon. So just, if you can support the forehead, go ahead and try supporting the forehead. You can also make a little bridge where you have two blocks and a bolster on top and you rest. There's so many ways to try to build props up to support you instead of you going down to the floor. Whatever you're doing, try to rest the forehead, rest the brain. Use your core. Maintain the stability of your pelvis, a little anterior tilt. Activate your legs so you're engaging your quad. And then come on up. And we're going to change sides. Feel free to just bring your knees to your chest for a moment between your two sides. If you need support underneath your knee, grab a blanket or a block underneath your knee. Let's start with a strap around your foot so you can do this pose actively before we do it passively. Get up on the edge of a blanket so you already have something going for you. You have a little anterior tilt of the pelvis. Sit bones, you can feel them widening. Lift the heart. Come forward instead of downward. Ground your legs. So we're engaging the quadricep muscle. See what it feels like to engage your core. Find the length of your spine. Stay inside your breath. Try not to creep up toward your neck with your shoulders. Stay loose and soft. Once you get to the place where your spine is staying neutral and you're as far forward as you'll go, try bowing your head without changing the shape of your lumbar spine. Relax your forehead. Once you are here, maybe start to climb into some support. So, maybe a blanket or a block or a bolster with your elbows on it and your head in your palms. Maybe you have enough props to build a little bridge over your leg so that you can have a bolster to rest on. Just see if there's a way for you to support your forehead. Try not to collapse. So, once you're in this pose and we're hanging out here for a little while, it's easy to just fall. It's easy to let your low back push out like a jelly donut. It's easy to let the head, everything, shoulders collapse. See if you can keep the integrity of what you're doing in your legs, pelvis, and low back, and then let the head stay soft. Back up. Legs are going to come wide. Same thing, if you have a bolster, you can stick the bolster up like this underneath your forehead. You can have the bolster right up against your pelvis and come a little lower. You can have blocks on top for your forehead. If you have none of these props, you can stick your two blocks one on top of the other and put your elbows on top of them and then rest your head in your hands. So build a bridge for your head. And remember that our pelvis is not rolling back. If anything, we're a little anterior tilted. So edge of the sit bones on the edge of a blanket can be very helpful. Ground through your legs, rooting your femur bones down so that they're in the sockets, in the back edge of the sockets, so our pelvis can roll over our femur bones. Support with your head, or support your head with whatever props you're doing. How's your breath? Relax your shoulders, let your forehead soften into the support. Give the cue to your nervous system that all is well. when you're ready to come out of there, you can. Now, if we were doing a yin class, we would kind of hang out in there for like 5 or 10 minutes per each of these poses. But always remember, especially if you're staying for a long time, that the body likes to collapse, right? So can you keep the integrity and then support the ease? So let's find a way to neutralize that. Come onto your back, grab a block if you want to. You can do this actively if you prefer, and come up to a bridge pose. So you can stick a block under your sacrum. You can do this pose very actively with no block. You can put a block between your thighs. However you feel like being in a bridge. Stabilize the pelvis. Open the breath. Root into the four corners of your feet. And then melt your hips back down. Okay. Reverse pigeon. If you have the ability to put your left foot on a piece of furniture or a wall, all the better. Okay, so right foot on top of left knee. If you prefer to do pigeon pose, that's fine too. Try to take a variation today where you are supporting your head. So if you're coming into pigeon pose, allow there to be a block underneath your forehead. So that either way, whether you're on your back or whether you're forward, that your head is supported, the back of the head or the forehead. Let the earth hold you. So if you're in pigeon pose, actually either pose, we're still rooting the femur bone in the back of the joint. We're still widening the sit bone. We're still melting the skull. Find some ease here. Let the head relax. Okay, let's find our way to the second side. If you're in pigeon pose, adjust, take support in whatever way you need. And then if you're in reverse pigeon pose, try doing the posture today with your body support, your foot supported so that your head can rest on the floor with ease. You're not wrestling with trying to hold your leg. So either way, whichever pose you're getting into, you're going to widen the sit bones, anterior tilt the pelvis a little bit so that the low back is neutral. This doesn't mean a back bend. It's just neutralizing the pelvis. Relax the shoulders. Relax the forehead on the block or the back of the head on the floor. Breathe your way into ease. What can you melt more of? Come out of the pose when you're ready. One more time on your back. You can rock a little bit. Now choose your pathway. Do you want to twist? Do you want a happy baby pose? Do you want to kind of stick your legs up in the air? You know, find what's a little bit of Supta Baddha Konasana. Whatever, follow the body's choice. Follow your body's choice. We're preparing for Shavasana now. Now, whatever you're choosing, when you are done, there's no rush. I'm not sure what you're all doing, so just find the little pathways. But before you lay flat for Shavasana, you might consider having some support underneath your knees, and like either legs up on a couch or a bolster or blocks with a blanket on top underneath your knees, something like that. Before you do so, bend your knees, put your feet on the floor. You can even knock your knees together if you want, and just put your hands on your forehead, maybe over your eyes too, you decide. And just allow the weight and warmth of your hands to be just a little bit of a reminder to the skull. And you don't have to keep your hands there, you can move them wherever you want. But just a reminder to relax and find ease. Maybe the tension's in your jaw and you'd like to put your hands over your ears and your jaw. Maybe you'd like to put your hands underneath the base of your skull or over your collarbones or over your shoulders. Just find where your body needs a little imprinting of ease. And then as you find Shavasana, I would recommend some support underneath the knees. You don't have to take my recommendations. You can, do whatever you want. Okay, so make sure you're warm. Make sure you're comfortable. And make sure the back of your head can rest on the floor. Give the earth all of your weight. Check in. Are you as weighted as you can be? And that doesn't mean push into the floor, but is there anything else you can give? Is there any more weight you can give over? Once you settle, relax your limbs. Relax your skull. Soften the eyes. Soften your jaw. Relax your tongue. Relax your breath. Soften your belly and let your breath take you for a ride. Just following the breathing. Let's come into our breath again. One more time, melt the body. Feel the response in the nervous system to your practice. Melt all that's happening inside your head. Just drop some tension. Let's begin to move our limbs. Maybe start with your head turning from side to side, or ankles, wrists, fingers, toes. Eventually inviting movement, whatever feels good. So just do what feels good. Come onto your side as you are ready. Have a breath. And bring yourself to sit upright. Let's place our hands together at our heart. Just take a moment to offer your practice the energy you've cultivated. Send forth your love, your care. Namaste. Thank you, everyone.